Hare Krishna. So today we have a program under the auspices of the Youth Forum, but it is also open not only for those who are young in body, but also for those who are young in heart. The soul is eternal, ever youthful, ever fresh like Krishna. So therefore everyone can participate. Today I wish to discuss one very important subject, and that is, why should one take to spiritual life in young age? Generally, people are of the opinion that spiritual life is something that should be practiced when one becomes very old, when one has retired perhaps, when one has nothing else to do, when one cannot enjoy this world anymore, then we should spend some time. And most young people who begin to take spiritual life very seriously are often admonished by their elders, their relatives and so on, by saying, this is not the age for this. Now you must work hard, study hard, get good marks, get the gold medal in your college or your school, then get a very good job, make a lot of money, have nice house, big car, get a good name and fame in society. That is success. All this God, yes, you can do. Once you have accomplished all these other things, then if you have time, it's okay. But within limits. Do it within limits. 5 minutes in the morning. Bow down before the Lord. Go to the temple if you like. Bow down your head. Give some little donation in the month. But when we speak of young people taking to spiritual life in a serious way, in a dedicated way, then there is a lot of alarm everywhere. So let us see many good reasons why it is better to take to spiritual life, Krishna consciousness, at a young age. Now, for a change, this is your lecture. So today all of you are going to give the lecture. So you are going to give different reasons, and we are going to talk about that. What do you think are the different reasons why one should take to spiritual life early in age rather than wait till old age? So you can start your thinking machines whirring, and you can come up with whatever suggestions and ideas and points that you can think of. Yes, so you can start. Yes. Yes. We think, that's the first point. We think that we will do Krishna consciousness when we become old, because we think that we are going to die in ripe old age. Perhaps when I'm 85, 90, 100, then I may die. So we are presuming, we are taking for granted that we are going to die in ripe old age. But is that presumption very valid? No. Death can come any time. Who knows whether we are going to live to be 80 years old, 70 years old, 60 years old? Who knows? We have no idea. So when we say that we will practice Krishna consciousness only in old age, we have no guarantee that we are going to live till old age. But somehow, as they say, hope lies eternal in the human breast. There is a saying by one poet. In the Mahabharata, there is a story of how King Yudhishthir is accosted by Yamaraj in disguise. When they were going through the forest, Bhima had gone to search for some water, and he did not return. None of the other brothers also returned. And when Yudhishthir went searching for them, he found them lying unconscious on the bank of a pond. And they had all been trying to drink water there. And they had been forbidden by somebody who said that this is my property and you cannot drink here. This is not meant for you human beings. But Bhima, being as powerful as he was and little arrogant, he refused. And as soon as he touched the water to drink, he fell down. So when Yudhishthira came searching, he was wondering what has happened. What is that power that has even felled Bhima like this? And there doesn't seem to be any sign of violence. Then a yaksha came in front of him. A yaksha is another species of life, just like Rakshasa, Asura, Deva, like that yaksha. Gandharvas. So the yaksha came and he said, if you want to be alive and if you want your brothers to be alive, then you have to answer all the questions I'm going to ask you. This is a very famous episode in the Mahabharata. It's called Yaksha Prashna. In Karnataka, the Yakshagan is very famous. That's of course a different thing. It's a kind of drama based on some religious theme. But the Yaksha Prashna is very important. He asked him many questions. And pat the questions came and pat the answers came. Yudhishthira Maharaj was very quick, very intelligent. He knew the principles of Dharma. So he was able to correctly, satisfactorily answer. One of the questions that Yudhishthira Maharaj was asked was, what is the most amazing thing in this universe? And Yudhishthira Maharaj replied, Ahanya ahani bhutani gachanti iha yamalayam sheshah sthavaram icchanti kim ascharyam atah param. He said, Ahanya ahani. Every day, as the days go by, one after the other, bhutani gachantiha. All living entities, they go. Where do they go? Yama alaya. What is the abode of Yama? Death. In other words, in a poetic way, Yudhishthira Maharaj is saying, every day we see with our own eyes, or we hear about it, or we read about it, that many living beings are dying. But Sheshah, those who are still left behind, those who are still alive, Sthavaram icchanti. They think death will never come to me. I am going to be alive all the time. Death is happening here, it is happening there, it is happening to everybody, but me, no, it will not come to me. Kim ascharyam atah param. What can be more surprising than this? This is a fact. Although we read in the newspapers and hear stories many times of young people dying of various diseases, of accidents, of catastrophes, of bomb blasts. Sometimes we hear even of school children dying. We hear of infants dying. So many cases, but still we think, well, it's all right, it's happening all around me, but it won't happen to me. For me, as far as I am concerned, I will live till a ripe old age. I will be an old person before I die. So this is the most amazing thing in the world. So why should we presume that I will live till I become old? There is no guarantee of that. Death can come any time. And in fact, one who wants to be spiritually successful must keep this fact in mind all the time. That death can come next moment. Indeed, it can come. Do you all have faith? It can come? Are you 100% sure that we are all going to return home alive tonight? Can you say with guarantee? None of us can say with guarantee. We hope. We don't like to think about it, that it won't happen, that we won't reach home alive. But none of us can give an assurance that we are going to reach home alive tonight. So therefore, in this way, human beings are always trying to hide from the reality of death. And therefore they are living in a world of illusion. So Chanakya Pandit says, if you want to be spiritually successful, remember the reality. The reality is that death could come any moment, and that moment could be the next moment. So always live thinking that the next moment death is coming. That doesn't mean, of course, that we should always live a life of fear. Death can come, next moment death will come. Not like that. It means that we live with a consciousness that all our plans, all our wealth, everything can be finished. So let us live a spiritually worthwhile life. Let us do something in life that is really valuable, that we can take away at death. Because spiritual assets are the only things that we can take away at death. No other assets can we take away. Our money, our share certificates, fixed deposit receipts, our gold, our home, our new car, nothing we can take away. Everything remains here. Neha bhikramanashosti pratyavayo na vidyate svalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. In the second chapter of the Gita, Lord Krishna explains that one who endeavors on this spiritual path, he is never the loser. Whatever he has gained, it will always remain with him, and even death will protect him from the greatest fear. Even death will not be able to steal away his spiritual assets. But material assets, certainly they are going to be stolen from us. 100% they will be stolen at death. And many times, even before that, it is taken away. Sometimes by thieves, sometimes by inflation, sometimes by the income tax people, sometimes by our own relatives. It is all gone. But spiritual assets can only increase. So therefore Chanakya says, if you want to be really successful in life, spiritually successful, imagine that you are going to die next moment. On the other hand, Chanakya Pandit gives some consolation to those who can't take to spiritual life. He says, all right, if you want to be materially successful, if spiritual success is not something that you want or care for, and material success and prosperity and name and fame, etc. is what you want, then imagine that death will never come. Imagine that you are immortal. Because then you will have the enthusiasm to go on working hard and struggling to get material prosperity and success. People really have to struggle hard. Day and night the struggle goes on. The more we have, the more we want. And the struggle is endless. Just imagine, if a materialistic person were to work on the assumption that death can come any time, he will not have any enthusiasm left to work. He will think, I am working so hard for my business and the profit and everything is coming, and if I die next moment, then what's the use of my hard work? Everything will be taken away from me, so why work hard? He will have nothing, no inspiration to work hard. So therefore Chanakya Pandit said, if your goal is illusory, let the assumptions let them also be false. Because you want to live in a dream world, so let your assumptions also be within that dream. Well, what is your dream? Your dream is that you want to be happy in this material world. Your dream is that you want to be materially prosperous and derive happiness and satisfaction from that. But this is a dream. It is not possible. No one has been, no one is, and no one ever will be happy in material prosperity and enjoyment in this world. So therefore, if somebody wants to be materially successful and happy, then he is living in what Prabhupada called a fool's paradise. He is living in a dream world. It will never happen. So therefore, his assumptions of life have also to be illusory. To think that I will never die. That means he is living in a dream world, in a fantasy world. His fantasy is, I will never die. I will go on living. There is eternal life. But that eternal life is in the spiritual world. It is not here. In this world we cannot have eternal life. So long as the material body is there, death will come and destroy everything. So therefore, why should we think that I am going to live till ripe old age? I should presume that I may not live so long. If I am a youth, if I am a young man, death can come anytime. If I am a child, death can come in my childhood. Therefore, I should start practicing Krishna consciousness now. Because I do not know when death will come, and I do not know whether I will survive till old age. Very good. Good point. Second point. Any other suggestions? Yes. Yes. When we are young, our mind is fresh. Our intelligence is powerful. Our memory is sharp. Our grasping power is quick. A child can learn something very quickly. But as one grows older, it takes longer and longer to learn things. So if we learn and practice these things in our youth, then automatically it is much better. But in old age, very difficult to remember. Our memory starts failing us. And in so many ways, the mind and intelligence give us trouble. So it is not possible in old age to suddenly start. So the best time is youth, because we are fresh. Very good reason. Third reason? Anyone? It's your lecture. Yes. Yes? Very nice point. If you want to give something, a gift to someone, especially something is valuable, it should be fresh. Suppose you go to some person's, you want to give a gift to somebody, a birthday present. You want to give a nice rose. What kind of rose will you give? Will you give a rose that is 2 months old? Or will you give a fresh rose that has just been plucked? Which one will you give? A fresh rose. In fact, if you give a rose that is very old, it is already withered, there is no fragrance, the leaves have become black, there is no life in that flower. In fact, it will be an insult, not a compliment. The person will be very offended. Just see what kind of flower he has given me. So in the same way, what is the use of wasting our youthful days when the body is fresh, energetic, full of vitality, enthusiasm, which is the best time that the body can be used in the service of the Lord. The body can be dedicated in so many ways for serving Krishna. And in old age comes, we say, now my dear Krishna, I am yours. When the body was able and willing to enjoy sense gratification, we were enjoying, forgetting Krishna. We had no time or place for Krishna in our life. When old age came, and with old age came all the troubles, and now that I am unable to enjoy my senses and exploit the resources of this world for my pleasure, then I tell God, my dear Lord, I am yours. What will God respond? Now I don't want you. What good are you to me now? What can you do now at this stage in your life? The best years of your life you gave for your own selfish enjoyment. So when he says, my dear Lord, now I am yours, in brackets, what he's actually saying is, now that I cannot enjoy my senses, my dear Lord, now I am yours. So Krishna doesn't enjoy that. It is not something very pleasing. Of course, at least that. Better to at least do it in old age than not at all. But nevertheless, it is not something good. The mentality is not nice that we enjoy sense gratification in our healthy days And when old age comes, then we say, now I want to surrender to Krishna. So we must surrender when the body is capable of doing things. It is fresh. That is the best offering to Krishna. Isn't it? So that is which point? Number 3? Number 3. Somebody noting down? Okay, number 4. Yes.
There is always a chance in the young age to progress, to development. Then in old age you understand being receptive, and it's like at the young age if you learn it, you can tell to 10 people. But in the young age we are not able to learn, and how will tell it to others?
In a young age, you can make progress in any field very fast. Isn't it? In old age, it's not possible. And in old age, how much time do you have left to make progress? Isn't it? Suppose you say that I'm trying for something very difficult, you need some time. But in old age, your time is running out. You don't have much time left. So, in order to accomplish or achieve the same difficult goal, you have very, very less time. And your speed of operation is very slow. Because of your old age, your mind, intelligence, body have become dull. So therefore, better to be Krishna consciousness in youthful days. So we have our whole life in which we can work hard to make our life successful. So there is a good chance that by the time we reach old age and our point of death, we would have made sufficient progress in life. So it gives us sufficient time also. And the speed of progress in Krishna consciousness can be very nice. Good point. That is the 4th point. Number 5. Yes. What? Yes. Very nice point. Youth is an age of energy, vitality. If you don't use it for Krishna's service, it has to be used somewhere. Then where will it be used? For wrong purposes. It will be used for all kinds of sinful activities. So what is the use? If we don't want that the youths in the world should go on the wrong path, we have to get them to Krishna consciousness. And now there is no option. The attractions, the temptations of the world are so powerful, so strong now. The pressure of friends in the school, in the college, around us where we stay, it is so powerful. Very difficult for young people to resist the temptations. In school and college, the friends will call, come on, let us go to the cinema. Or let us go here and let us go there. Let us go for this picnic, that picnic. And they may engage in so many sinful activities at that time. So the youthful period is a dangerous period. Because one is exposed to many, many influences. And because the senses are very strong and turbulent at that age, and the energy available is very large, it can very easily go on the wrong track. And if that happens, then one's life may be spoilt. So therefore, this is the time when this energy has to be channelized for a higher purpose, a spiritual purpose. So when that very same energy is used to serve Krishna, then not only will one be saved from going to hellish condition of life, but one will actually make one's human form of life successful. Very nice point. How many are over? 5. Now 6th point.
As you were saying, life is a preparation, death is the examination. So when an athlete for 100-meter race, he prepares for years. So you have to keep an exam.
Very good. Death is the examination. Life is a period of preparation. So we have to prepare all life long. Like an athlete, if he wants to go to the Olympics, or a table tennis player wants to go to the Olympics or World Championships, then he has to really practice hard for many years from young age. If he doesn't do that, how is it possible that just without any practice he will suddenly be qualified for the Olympics? Is it possible? Similarly, a student, he has a final exam at end of his year, and he doesn't study anything whole year. And he has fun, he enjoys himself. And last night before the exam, he starts inquiring, what is the subject tomorrow for the examination? What is the portion? What is the syllabus? He starts finding out what is the syllabus, starts studying. Is he going to be able to pass? Not possible. So if one wants to be perfect in anything, one has to have long years of practice. If one doesn't practice in early age, how can one become perfect in old age? If one starts in old age, there is no question of attaining perfection at that time. Practice makes perfect. You have heard this saying. And practice means time. So one must practice all one's life. Then it will be possible for us to achieve success. So this practice means that one has to, in youthful years, dedicate time and energy for the practice of Krishna consciousness. One cannot wait till old age for this. Very nice. That's point number 6. Point number 7.
At the age of the youth, that person can be trained easily. At the age of the youth. Like for example, the plant, if it's bent at the right age, it can be grown on the ground. It becomes like very tall, it can't be trained.
Very nice. It is in youthful period that one can be trained easily. When a plant is young, you can bend it and make it grow in a certain direction. But once it becomes a big tree, then you can't change it. When we grow old, one's attitudes become very rigid. We have fixed ideas about things. Very difficult to make sometimes old people change their views. They have been accustomed to doing things for so many years, they can't change. Prabhupada said one time, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. There is a proverb like that. So if you start something in old age, how can you possibly attain success so soon? So we have to start young. That's point number 7. Point number 8. Yes, very good point. Speaking from deep experience. In youth, the responsibilities and burdens of life are less. As one grows older, the responsibilities, burdens, tensions, anxieties grow in life. When one is a small child, one is completely happy-go-lucky. No cares, no worries in the world. Simply playing, enjoying, coming back, eating, sleeping, jumping. No worries. Parents have all the worries. Where is he gone? Not come back today? Has he injured himself? Then in school, you grow up. Okay, you just have to pass exams, but still enough fun is there, playing games. In college days, roaming here, running around here and there, going to cinema, going here, going there. Once he starts a job, so long as he's a bachelor, still there is freedom. One gets married, then he has to have children, then he has to worry about house, and then maintenance, and then bills, and then children, and the education of children, this school, that school. So many headaches, so many tensions. So where is he going to think about God? Very difficult. If he has not thought earlier, it is going to be very difficult now. It will be a big burden. So better to do Krishna consciousness when the burdens in life, responsibilities in life are very few. So young period is very nice for that. Very good. What else? This is which point? 8 point? Now number 9. Yes.
In your trouble, there is a time when you create so many habits or attachments. So
Wonderful, very good point. Now, youth is a time, if we develop certain habits, it will remain with us throughout life. Have you heard the saying, old habits die hard? Suppose you start doing something regularly and make it a habit, then very difficult to get rid of a habit. It may be a good habit or a bad habit. There is a proverb in Eastern India that if you do something 21 times continuously, day after day, then it becomes a habit. Like if you want to get accustomed to getting up early in the morning to come for Mangalarti, get up 21 days in a row. Not that you do one day today and next day after 1 month, and then you do over 21 years you do once a year. Not like that. But 21 days in succession, you get up every day for Mangalarati. And you will see after that it is much easier for you to do it. Although initially you may have some difficulty. But if you practice, of course this is not a hard and fast scientifically proved rule, it is just a general proverb. The point is not 20 days or 22 days or 21 days. The point is that if you keep on doing certain things repeatedly, practice it, it becomes a habit. When something becomes a habit, you naturally and spontaneously flow towards that activity. You don't have to externally try. So long as something is not spontaneously coming, you have to really try hard to do it. So also in youth, if you cultivate a bad habit, very difficult to give up throughout your life. Many times in college days, we see a young boy maybe, and nowadays young girls also, they may be drawn into bad company. They will start smoking cigarettes or taking alcohol, sometimes taking drugs, and doing so many other bad activities. So they are drawn, first time they do, they don't like it. This is the experience that many young people tell. They say, the first time I started smoking, I never liked. But after some time, he keeps on doing because his friends say, come on, come on, come on. He does it, and then it becomes habit, then he can't give it up. So also with bad habits, with good habits. So just like we see so many young boys and girls getting spoiled today in bad company and how they develop bad habits, the same way if in youthful life they come to good company and develop good habits, getting up early in the morning, taking bath, chanting the name of the Lord, coming to the temple regularly, avoiding sinful activities, leading a pure life, then these habits will also remain throughout life. And the more and more and more one does it, the stronger one will become in that. You see, the philosophy behind this is that with every action that we perform, it causes an impression in our consciousness. This impression is called a samskar. In our chitta, in our consciousness, this imprint is there of that activity. Suppose there is one person, first time he goes to start drinking alcohol. His friends say, come on, come on, come on, let us go and drink alcohol. And he goes. Whether he likes it or not, he may not even like it, but he takes it. But when he takes that alcohol, then that has now created an imprint in his mind. Just as sometimes, when you walk on the mud after the rain, your footprints remain in the mud. Similarly, whatever activities you perform, that bija remains, that seed remains in your consciousness. And that will actually impel you to do the same activity again. And then because of that impression, that acts as an impulse to you. Yes, do it again. So now you are a little more inclined to do that same activity. Marginally so. Then you do it again. And that imprint becomes stronger. Double. And then it impels you more powerfully. Now third time your desire is a little stronger. Because that impetus is more, because the imprint is stronger. You do it more. And now you are really beginning to like it. Just a little bit. And then that imprint is stronger. So the more you do, it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger till it devours you. You see, bad habits are like this. Alcoholics Anonymous is an organization that deals with those people who are chronic alcoholics for many years. And they have a statement, they have a rule which every one of them follows all their life. And that rule is, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. This association is run by people who were formerly alcoholics who got reformed. And even though these teachers, they themselves may not have drunk alcohol for the last 20 years, but they still accept this rule that I am still an alcoholic, although I have not drunk alcohol for 20 years. Because before that I was an alcoholic. Any time that bad habit may come, suddenly it will come up. Very dangerous. If he is careless, if he is a little negligent, suddenly it will come. Prabhupada explained this by giving one example. He said sometimes in our bed we may get some bed bugs. Have you experienced bed bugs? Very painful. They start biting and they suck your blood. And then students in hostels, I know, they start burning their beds and they do all kinds of things to get rid of these bed bugs. And then we think that yes, now my bed is free of bugs. But soon, 1 month, 2 months later, what happens? At the right time, at the right season, the eggs have not been destroyed and they give birth. The bed bugs come again, they drink our blood and again become nice and plump. So like that, we may think, yes, I have not given up alcohol for many days. I have given up alcohol for many days. Now I am safe. I have protected. But no. These people are speaking from their own experience. Their experience is that even though 20 years they have given up alcohol, still they consider themselves as alcoholics. So just imagine how powerful is the force of habit. That is why we see that many times people who come to devotional service, they become very sincere devotees also. But if they had a very sinful life before they became devotees, they must be very careful that they do not become negligent in following the rules and regulations of bhakti. Because if you are negligent and careless and you cease to follow the rules, then you will fall back to the same old habits that you were doing earlier. And we see this practically in the case of many, many devotees. If there is some devotee who was, before he became a devotee, a chain smoker, and somehow he becomes negligent in his chanting of the holy name, he becomes negligent in following other regulative principles, then sooner or later he will fall back to that same old habit that he had earlier. Because that chitta, that impression in his, that sanskar that is there in his consciousness is so strong, it has not gone. Because the fire of his bhakti is not strong enough at this time. If the fire of our bhakti is strong, it can burn to ashes the seeds of our past bad activities. Very easily it can burn. But if we are not very intense in our bhakti and careful in following the regulative principles, these old bad habits may come anytime. So therefore, better to minimize our bad habits. Whatever bad habits have been done in the past before we came to Krishna consciousness, all right, let it be. What can be done? What has happened has happened. But henceforth, we should try to create only the good habits. And this is the period in youth and childhood to do it. If we do it now, then the life will go along very nicely. Then that good habit will also get strengthened. Just like the bad habit gets reinforced, the good habit will also get reinforced. And then it will become very powerful, and one day it will become spontaneous. Then spontaneously we will get up to chant the name of the Lord. We will be very eager for that. So youth is the time to cultivate these good habits. Very nice point. Any other points? How many are over? 9 points? 10th point. Yes.
The conscious is like a blank slate. Blank slate.
Yes. In youth or in childhood, The consciousness is like a blank slate. You can write many things on it. But in old age, the consciousness is like khichdi. You know what's khichdi, no? Everything mixed. So much dirt there already filled up because of exposure to the whole world. Hundreds of things dumped into our brain. In the Western countries, when ISKCON movement first started, many young people, they took to Krishna consciousness, and the elders and even others in America started becoming very concerned and worried. And especially the parents of the youth. And they went to the police, they went to the courts, and not only that, they also brought psychiatrists. And they thought that their children had gone mad. And then many allegations were made against the movement. And they said that this movement is brainwashing our young people. So when this allegation was made and Prabhupada heard it, one of his devotees came and told him that this is what some people are saying. They are criticizing us, that we are actually brainwashing the youth. Prabhupada said, yes, they are correct. Their brains are so dirty and filled up with so many filthy things, I am washing it by the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. So yes, I am very much involved in brainwashing. It is required. So by the time people grow up, they have so much dirt in their brains and very difficult for people to accept things. As we were discussing yesterday during Queen Kunti's prayers, that when one is young, one has faith, one has innocence, one easily accepts good instruction. But when we grow up, we are so doubtful, so skeptical, whether it's true or not, who knows, what is the proof, who has seen. So all these things. But when he's young, it's like a clean slate. If the good sanskars are given at that time, it is very easy for that young mind to blossom in spiritual consciousness. Very nice. That is point number 10. Point number 11. Yes.
Suppose at young age, what happens sometimes we become very arrogant and we become try to make me think I'm the smartest, I'm the intelligent. At the young age, when you understand spiritual things, when you know there is someone who is very superior to you, so that time you become humble or something and we try to follow him. But at the old age, it's like we have already passed so many things and it's very difficult to follow someone or to take instructions from someone.
Yes, this is also a good point. That when we are young, generally we see that one becomes a little arrogant. Or one is proud because one has good health, one has energy, and one can do so many things. And therefore one thinks one is very intelligent, one is very capable, one is not willing to listen to the elders. This is usually the phase through which many people pass in that period of life. And therefore what happens as a result of that is that one may do many wrong activities throughout life, for which one may repent later, and so much time is wasted. And if one tries to become humble in old age, it's very difficult. Eventually material nature crushes everybody's pride. Time, Kala Chakra, is like the grinding wheel. It crushes everybody. So however arrogant and proud somebody may be, old age will eventually crush his pride. And death crushes it completely. But why not learn early? Why wait till old age to learn this lesson? Why commit so many mistakes right from young age to old age? So one should try to develop these things from childhood, learn the good things, learn how to become humble, learn the right way of living. So one saves oneself much trouble in old age. One leads a very happy life. So that is point number 11. Very nice. What else? Yes. Yes. That's the 12th point. If the youth are not trained in spiritual life, then they will not grow up to be spiritually minded citizens. then how will they train the next generation? And in this way the whole society will go to hell. That was one of Arjuna's arguments in the Bhagavad Gita for not wanting to fight. When he said that if all the elders are killed, who are very dharmic in their outlook, then who will guide the youngsters? Who will protect the ladies? Strishu dushtasu varshneya. The women folk will become dushta, they will get spoilt, they will get corrupted. The dharma will not be there any longer in the society. So the whole society will perish. If the youth remain very spiritually minded, the society can prosper and flourish. But the youth can be so only if the elders are like that. And the elders can be like that only if they were trained when they were young. So this cycle is very, very important. Nowadays we find that many parents come to our temples, in ISKCON temples, complaining about their children. Oh, my child does this, my child does that, I'm very worried, he's speaking lies, he has started stealing. But in their own lives you will see that they will have their own problems. When there is a phone call in the house, the child will lift up the phone and he says, the phone call is for daddy. He says, I will see if daddy is there. He goes inside, says, daddy, such and such person has phoned up. Go and tell him that daddy is not at home. Tell him I am not at home. So he goes to the phone, picks up the phone and says, daddy says he is not at home. And then the father, he shouts at the child, foolish child, what are you saying? So we train the child to speak lies. The parents will fight in front of the children. The parents will sit in front of the TV and watch all kinds of things. The parents will never go to Krishna conscious temples. They will never try to instill spiritual sanskars in their own life. They only want their children to be reformed. They don't want to reform themselves. So how is that possible? So when they are young, they become very well trained up. When they become old enough to have young children, they can give those sanskars to the children. Otherwise it is not possible. We will generate a whole generation of Rakshasas, little Rakshasas. Fine, very good. What else? Any more points? Yes. Yes, that point we discussed, that basically our time is wasted in so many different activities, in sleep, in eating. There was a alarm clock that somebody gave me. At the back of that there was a assessment of how our life goes. And he had calculated that in a life of 70 years, he said we spend so many number of years sleeping, so many number of years eating, so many number of years commuting, so many number of years bathing. And he said, what is left finally? Very little. Very little time left. So why waste time? Yes. So we can say the goal of human life is God realization. If we understand that the goal of life is to realize God, and that is why we have got a human body, then why should we unnecessarily waste time? It doesn't make sense. Therefore Prahlad Maharaj says to his friends in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Kaumara acharet pragyo dharman bhagavatan iha dullabham manusham janma tad apyadhruvam arthadam. He says, my dear friends, Kaumara acharet pragyo. From Kumar stage, the childhood. Kumar means below 5 years of age. Actually, below 5 is Balya, and also called Kumar, the age of 5. So one should start practicing spiritual age not from youth, but from childhood, Prahlad says. Actually, Prahlad himself learned Krishna consciousness in his mother's womb. And his mother had been kidnapped by Indra when Hiranyakashipu had gone to the forest to perform austerities. And at that time, Narad Muni had come to the rescue of Prahlad's mother. And somehow in Narad Muni's behest, Indra saved or did not kill Prahlad's mother. Prahlad was in the womb. Narad Muni instructed the Srimad Bhagavatam to his mother, but actually it was meant for Prahlad. His mother forgot the Srimad Bhagavatam, but Prahlad never forgot because he was in the womb. So the verdict of the evidence of the Srimad Bhagavatam is that Krishna consciousness should not start in youth. Krishna consciousness should not start in childhood. It should start when the child is in the womb. What to speak of youth? So Prahlad says, this Bhagavad Dharma, Dharman Bhagavatan Iha, this should be practiced from the young childhood. Durlabham Manusham Janma, because this Manushya Janma, this human form of life, is very Durlabham, is very rare. Among the 84 lakh species of life, very rarely does some living entity, a soul, get this human form of life. In the 84 lakh species, only 4 lakh species are human beings. 80 lakh species are the plants, the insects, the reptiles, the mammals, the birds, and so on. So after moving, transmigrating through 80 lakh species of life over such a long period of time, we get the human form of life. And this human form is a special gift of God in which we can practice Bhagavat Dharma, Bhakti. In other species we cannot do it. So why should we waste this precious time, considering that so many hours go in sleeping, eating and so on? So better to utilize our time by starting young. Very nice. What else? I can think of another few points. One is, people say we should wait till old age to do Krishna consciousness, but our question is, what is the definition of old age? Anyone you ask, even a 60-year-old man who is materialistic, he'll say it's too early. He'll say I have to be 70. You ask a 70-year-old materialistic man, he'll say when I'm 80. Even on deathbed, a person may not be inclined to come to the shelter of Krishna if he has not been trained. So old age never comes for one who doesn't want it, as far as his coming to Krishna consciousness is concerned. And in any case, old age means the period just before death. And as we have seen, death can come any time. So that means every day of our life is old age. Isn't it? So now, therefore we say, how old are you? We don't say, how young are you? No? How old are you? I am 20 years old, not 20 years young. So we are always using the word old to say that we have become old already. We are old men and old women. We are 15 years old man. He is a 15-year-old young girl, old girl. So, already every day of our life, every moment is old age. So we should take to Krishna consciousness now. One earlier point that was mentioned was that the mind and intelligence, etc., are sharp in young age. We create good habits, etc. Another important point about old age is that the physical body also becomes very diseased, very weak. It gives a lot of trouble. You discover different organs of your body because they're all giving you problems now. It's a very, very difficult period. And the whole focus in old age changes to one's body. If you see in old age what discussions people have, it's mostly on health only. Am I right? My leg is paining, my stomach is paining, my back is paining, my this is happening, that. This is what happens. So King Kulashekar prays, Idam shariram shatasandhi jarjaram Patatyavashyam parinam peshalam kim aushadham pritchasi mudha durmate niramayam Krishna rasayanam piba. He says, idam shariram, this body, shata sandhi jarjaram. It is made up of so many sandhis, joints, which get rigid with age. Those of you who are a little elderly in age, you will know, arthritis, all the joints start paining. Joints become stiff, jarjaram. You cannot move. Your flexibility, mobility becomes severely hampered. So Kulashekar Maharaj says, idam shariram shatasandhi jarjaram patatyavashyam. Patati, that means to fall down. That means death. Death is certain for this body. Parinama peshalam. The beauty of this body is very fleeting. This beauty is there how long? Just for a few years of youth it is there. Then once old age comes, the beauty is gone, lost. Kim aushadhim pritchasi mudha durmate. King Kulashekar speaks very strongly. Sometimes great devotees of the Lord, they speak very strong language. And sometimes people get very upset about this. Like Prabhupada also used to speak very strongly. Sometimes he would meet somebody and call him a rascal to his face. Of course, we cannot do that. We should not try to imitate, because we are not Prabhupada. And many times, because Prabhupada was very elderly, so even big respected people in society would keep quiet when he said that. One time I remember, one Prabhupada disciple, lady, she was narrating her experiences. She was distributing books in one airport in America. And she had just heard Prabhupada telling somebody rascal. So when somebody refused to accept her books, said she was distributing, she called him, "You're a rascal, you're in sense gratification." So he just slapped her on the face. And she came back, a very chastened lady. She realized, I will never do this again now. So Prabhupada may speak strongly like this and get away with it, because he was an old man, he was a great saintly person, he was a sannyasi, he was self-realized, he had purity. So he could chastise, he could scold people and call them things to their faces, but cannot be imitated by everybody. So similarly, Kulashekar also, he is speaking very strong language. He says, Kim aushadhim pritchasi. Now that you have attained old age, your joints have become stiff, your beauty has gone, and death is nearby. Why are you constantly asking for aushadhi medicine? Give me this medicine, give me that medicine. Your whole consciousness is focused just on medicine, medicine, medicine. Durmate, so he says your mati, your intelligence is spoilt. Durmati. Mudha, mudha means foolish. So such strong language, just see. He says, oh foolish person, oh one who has lost all intelligence, why is your consciousness just focused on medicines? Why don't you drink the best medicine of all, Krishna Rasayanam? Rasayanam in Ayurveda is a tonic that rejuvenates, invigorates. So he says, you take Krishna Rasayanam. Krishna Rasayanam piba. Niramayam, it will keep you free from all material infections also. So take that. So this is the condition of the body at old age. Our whole consciousness gets shifted and we are simply worried about the body. Same Kulashekar Maharaj in his Mukunda Mala Stotra, he has another beautiful verse which was very dear to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada would quote this shloka many times. Do you know which verse? Krishna tvadiya pada pankaja panjarantam adyaiva vishatu me manasa raja hansaha prana prayana samaye kapavata pittaihi kantavarodhana vidhau smaranam kutaste. Very beautiful and important verse for all of us. Prabhupada not only recited this verse in the course of his lectures. Oh, the shloka comes, is it? I see. Prabhupada used to chant it as bhajan also. On his harmonium, he would sit and chant in many different tunes, this one verse. And what is the meaning of this verse? He says, my dear Lord Krishna, tvadiya Padapankaja Panjarantam. Your lotus feet are like a beautiful network of lotus flowers. And my mind is like that of a Rajahansa, of a swan. So let the lotus of my mind become entangled in the lotus stems of your lotus feet. In other words, what Kulashekar is praying, that right now, let my mind be totally absorbed in you. When my health is good, my mind is in good spirits and consciousness, my body is in fairly good condition, now let my mind be absorbed and let death come now if it will. Why? Because what will happen in old age? Old age will be very difficult. Prana prayana samaye. At the time when we are about to give up the life air, when we are very close to death, what will happen? Kapha vata pittaihi kantha avarodhana. According to Ayurveda, this body consists of 3 dhatus. Kapha, vata, pitta. Bile, air and mucus. And at the time of death, it is described that all these 3 things accumulate in the throat. And one cannot do anything. In the Shastras also it is described that the person on the deathbed wants to speak so many things, but he can only bring out gurgling sounds. And the Upanishads also declare that he creaks like a creaking old chariot. And he makes all kinds of strange, funny sounds because he wants to speak. He wants to express his agony, but he cannot do it. And that is a moment of extreme fear, extreme grief. So in that old condition, how can you possibly think of Krishna? So King Kulashekar is saying, it is extremely difficult in that condition to think of you, my Lord. So better you give me death now, when my health is good and when I am able to think of you nicely. Because when old age and death will come, it is so painful that I will not be able to think of you. The Puranas also explain that the pain of death is like the pain of the biting of 70,000 scorpions at one time. We know how much irritated we get when even one ant or a mosquito bites us, isn't it? We become very irritated. Imagine what happens when one scorpion or crab bites you. Very painful. What happens when 70,000 scorpions bite you at the same time? That is the pain of death. At that time, how can we possibly think of Krishna unless we have trained ourselves so nicely right from young age? So therefore, when the health is good, when the body is young and fresh, that's when we should actually take to Krishna consciousness. Which number point is this? 14th. 16th. Okay. And there is another point. That every age has its characteristic activity. There is a natural inclination for people to behave or act in certain ways at certain stages in their life. So therefore, one great saint has said, he has lamented actually, Balyastavat kridasaktah, Tarunastavat tarunisaktah, Vriddhostavat chintasaktah, Parope brahmani kopi nasaktah. He says, Balya stavat, Balya avastha. When one is in childhood, one is asakta, one is attached to what? Krida, to play. You have noticed little children, they want to play all day long. They have no time for lunch, no time for dinner. If you just allow them to play, whole day they will go on playing. That is their attachment. It is a natural condition of that age. They like to go on playing. So, Balyastavat krida saktaha. Tarunastavat. What is the characteristic of the tarun, of the youth age? The boy is attracted to the girl is attracted to the boy. So the attraction between the two sexes is the primary qualification of the quality of the age of youth. This is where most of the energy and attachment goes away. So childhood goes away in play, youth goes away in youthful attraction between the two sexes, and old age, what happens? What is one attached to in old age? Vriddho stavat chinta sakta, worry. In old age, one becomes attached to worrying. Oh, what will happen to me? What will happen to my wife or husband? What will happen to my children? What will happen to my grandchildren? What will happen to the world? What will happen to the country? So in old age it is natural, because old people are sitting in their home, they have no activity and they only think and worry. They need something to worry about. So in this state of worry, where is the question of thinking of the Lord? So this saint prays, Parepi Brahmani Kopi na sakta. So everyone has their attachments in life, the child, the youth, the old man. But nobody is attached to God. Where is the time? Which stage in life? So therefore, one must cultivate at the early stage itself. We can't postpone, because at every stage it has its own attachments which will take us away from God and make God realization very, very difficult for us. Any other reasons you can think of? Why we should take to Krishna consciousness young? One more reason. You want to hear? You see, there is a popular philosophy that is spoken today by many people, but it is not a new philosophy. It has been coming from the dawn of creation of the universe. And what is that? That philosophy is that youth is not the period for renunciation or for practicing spiritual life. Youth is the period when one must enjoy one's senses to the fullest, and practically one should experience how much suffering is caused as a result of material sense gratification. And that experience will give us the intelligence to then later on in life renounce. And that renunciation, that fixation in spiritual life will be long lasting. Because now we have experienced the misery of sense gratification in young age. We enjoyed, and now we suffer. So now I have realized, sense enjoyment is dangerous, now I should take to spiritual life. The same argument was given by one son of Brahma called Daksha Prajapati. He was a Prajapati. His task was to populate this universe with many people. So first, he had 10,000 sons. And he sent them out, do tapasya and come back. And then enter Grihastha ashram and produce progeny to populate the whole universe. So they went faithfully to do some austerities. And fortunately for them, and unfortunately for Daksha, they met one person. Who was that? Narad Muni. And Narad Muni came and he was happy. So many potential candidates. 10,000 all at one place. So he started preaching to them. And he preached in such a nice way. Eventually they all got convinced and they never went back home. They all became brahmacharis and left home and went away. When Daksha heard this, he became very upset. But he said, anyway, what to do? He's my brother, Narad Muni. He's also son of Brahma. He controlled himself somehow or the other. And he had 1,000 more sons. And then, when they were old enough, he said, all right, now you go to practice austerity, prepare for the Grihastha ashram, come back. And when you come back, then you create progeny and populate the world. So now Narad Muni was waiting. Another 1,000. Very good. So when he saw the 1,000, he approached them, my dear young boys, you look to be very, very virtuous, very well behaved, obedient boys. As obedient boys, you should know that you should follow in the footsteps of your older brothers. So go on the same path that your older brothers went. And he preached to them. Who can resist the preaching of Narad Muni? So they also followed in the footsteps of their brothers. And poor Daksha Prajapati, He became wild with anger. And when Narad Muni went there, Daksha Prajapati started cursing him, abusing him like anything. He said, "You are just a fake sadhu. You are a hypocrite. You are creating much damage in society because you are spreading wrong principles in life. You are making immature boys into renunciants, which is a great crime. Because in youth one must first of all enjoy the senses. Then in old age, when one suffers for this enjoyment, then one will develop renunciation. And that renunciation will be real. Otherwise, this premature renunciation will not last." In a sense, what he said was right, that premature renunciation is not good. But his idea that one should first enjoy, and when the suffering comes, one will renounce sense enjoyment, is not a correct idea. Prabhupada gave the example that a lady, she suffers a lot during childbirth. Childbirth is very, very painful. It is called labor pain, not labor pleasure. And she says, "Never, never, never again I will have another child. Enough, too much." And one devotee who was a doctor was telling the experience of one lady who was giving birth. And she was in so much pain, she said, "Kill the child, kill the child." Just imagine, which mother can speak like this about the child? But the pain was so much for her, there was some problem with the delivery, she was so frustrated in that pain. So the doctor said, "Look, the child will die, and you will also die. I don't mind, you just do it." Of course, she was just speaking in that phase of pain, but we can understand that at the time of birth, sometimes there is so much pain. And she says, "Never again." But soon thereafter, again, there is a child. So also Prabhupada said, simply because there is suffering, it doesn't mean that you will abstain from doing that which caused the suffering. The alcoholic, he drinks, he suffers like anything, but again he will go back to the alcohol. The smoker, he suffers, he has cancer, but he will still go back to that cigarette. Why? Old habits die hard. Because that habit has become so strong that now he cannot change it. You see, the desire for sense gratification is like a fire. You cannot extinguish a fire by putting ghee in it. What happens to the fire when you put ghee? It becomes more powerful. It blazes. So similarly, sense enjoyment is like the fuel that is put in the fire of desire for sense enjoyment. So the more you enjoy your senses, the more the desire for sense gratification increases, and the more difficult it becomes to renounce later on. So if you think that in young age I will enjoy life, and in old age I will be able to easily renounce, no. The material desires will remain in the heart, and they will not let go. Srila Prabhupada told one story, again about Akbar and Birbal. I think somehow every day one Akbar Birbal story is coming up. So what happened was, Akbar and Birbal used to often have some philosophical discussions. And this time, Akbar said, "My dear Birbal, I think that when one becomes old, one becomes wise. And automatically, one becomes renounced. Renunciation comes automatically with age, because one has seen the world." Birbal says, "No, my dear Highness, it is not like that. Material desires will not leave unless that particular individual has practiced renunciation throughout his life. It is not possible to all of a sudden just become renounced." So Akbar differed with him. He said, no, how can it be? In old age, nothing is possible. So Birbal said, "I will give you the proper answer at a suitable time." So some days passed. And then they heard the news that one of the ministers of Akbar, who was a very old man, he was on his deathbed. And so Akbar said, "Birbal, let us go and visit him. He is my dear minister, and he is in his last moments. It is proper that we should go and see him now." So Birbal said, yes, Your Highness, we will go. And I have a request. Please bring your daughter with you. My daughter? Why? Yes, please bring. So, okay. He brought them. So there was Akbar, there was Birbal, and there was Akbar's daughter. And as soon as they walked into the room, the minister, the old minister, was lying on his deathbed. He did not see the king of Hindustan. He did not see the wisest minister of Hindustan, but his eyes turned towards the young lady. And then Birbal looked at Akbar, Akbar looked at Birbal, and they understood that old age automatically does not free one from material desires. It doesn't mean that because one has become old, one will have renounced all sense gratification. No. The mind is still full of all these desires for sense gratification that one has cultivated throughout one's life. So it is a wrong idea to think that we should enjoy in the youth without restrictions and then suffer for it in old age and automatically get renounced. No, it's not possible. So the Vedic system was that one would practice renunciation right from childhood. Chanakya Pandit says, he gives a formula for raising children. Interesting for Grihasthas. He says, till the age of 5, you should fondle the children. Give them lot of love and affection. From the age of 6 till the age of 15, you should be very strict with a child. Discipline. And from the age of 16, the son should be treated like a friend, not like a son. This is the formula that he gave. So just as discipline was inculcated from a young age, so was a sense of renunciation. So right from a young age, as soon as the child was able to clean himself, was able to take care of his own personal toilet needs, as soon as the child was old enough for that, the parents sent him to the Gurukul. That was the Vedic system. Actually, people think today that I want my son to become educated, to become PhD, I want my son to become MBA, I want my son to go to America, get a good job. And they feel that their success as parents is to make their child a successful person in the world who has good name and fame and who has earned a lot of money. Especially if he can go to America, all the better. But they don't understand the Vedic system is that the duty of the parents, the glory of the parents is that they bring forth a child into this world only to find a right spiritual master or a guru to hand over the child to for training. At the age of 5 or 6 or 8, the parents go to the guru. My dear Guruji, now the child is yours. And from that age, say from 5 to 8, whatever time that he gets admitted to the Gurukul, till the age of 25, the child is completely under the care of the Guru at the Gurukul. He lives with the Guru and his wife, if he is a Grihastha. They take care of all the students like their own children in their own house. It's like one family. He trains them in various aspects. Because the parents sometimes have a tendency to be lenient with the children. But the teachers can be strict. So the Guru was also he was also loving, but he was also strict. And he would teach them the virtues of discipline, of understanding renunciation, austerity, penance. So the children from a young age were taught the virtues of hard work, the principles of doing seva for the Guru. They would be sent for menial tasks into the jungle, even if he was a king's son, like Krishna, for example. When he was in the Gurukul of Sandipani Muni at Ujjain, what happened? You know the story of how he and Sudama got lost in the jungle? Krishna was the son of the king. He is the Supreme Lord. And here he is being sent by his Guru into the forest to cut wood and bring it back. So it didn't matter whether somebody was poor or rich. But they were sent for ordinary jobs, menial jobs. So they were taught the virtue of simplicity in life. Simple living, high thinking. They were taught the virtues of learning to be austere. Certain basic early get up in the morning. Nowadays we find parents don't encourage their children to get up early because they themselves don't get up early. So the children should be made to get up early in the morning, take a bath, and do some spiritual practices in the house. The family should worship together, chant the holy name together. But that discipline is not being taught. But the Gurukuls, the Gurus used to do it. The children would get up, they would have their religious activities, then the classes would begin. They were also taught the virtues of renunciation. It was brahmacharya, completely abstaining from all forms of sense enjoyment. Brahma acharati iti brahmachari. To act on the spiritual platform, that is brahmacharya. But today, the students are anything but brahmacharis. All forms of sense enjoyment available to the college students and school students. So how can they have good intelligence? Therefore they become durmati, not sumati. So therefore they were trained like this from childhood. And this principle made them very strong. And then when they were 25 years old, some of them decided to remain as brahmacharis, and some of them would decide to enter the grihastha ashram. And they had more than 15 to 20 years of solid training as brahmacharis, so they would become very good, renounced grihasthas. They would not take family life as an opportunity simply for blind sense enjoyment. They would understand that family life is a concession given by the Lord. But that concession is not to be misused. And household life is meant for the family members, particularly the husband and the wife, to live together in Krishna consciousness, to serve the Lord only. That is the only purpose of marriage. And to produce God-conscious children into this world. So in this way, because he had been trained as a brahmachari nicely, he knew some principles of renunciation, so he was able to live a renounced grihastha's life. And because already he had that thread of renunciation running through him, at the age of 50, he was able to take the Vanaprastha ashram, the next ashram. Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha. Panchash ordhvam vanam prajet. At the age of 50, one should enter the forest. That means one should give up one's worldly business and occupation and family engagements, and the husband and wife together go to the forest. Of course, in the modern day life, there is no forest to go to. All the forests have been cut down. And nobody today has the kind of physical or mental strength to go into the forest. So the modern day Vanaprastha is to just give up one's business activities, professional activities, social activities, and just focus on Krishna conscious activities. So it was very easy for the Vanaprastha to leave his business, because he had been trained, and eventually to take sannyas. It was very simple. So in this way, the Vedic culture is the gradual cultivation of spiritual principles of life, like renunciation, discipline, devotion to God, study of the scriptures, chanting the name of God. All this training was given right from childhood in all the 4 ashramas. It is not that only the sannyas ashram is meant for renunciation. Every ashram has renunciation. Every ashram has austerities to perform. Every ashram has discipline and spiritual activities to perform. It is just different in degree and nature. So that is why the Vedic system said, start young. Even in modern day life, they understand this. All the sports administrators in the country, they have the principle, catch 'em young. So they will have training camps to identify fast bowlers. Small boys, 8-year-old, 9-year-old boys, they will train them to bowl, become fast bowlers, pacemen. So everywhere people want to catch them young, so why not in spiritual life? Why should we think that we have to wait till old age, till our body is not good or fit for anything else, and then we should practice spiritual life? That is not a very rational thing to do. We see that what we learn in youth, it becomes very useful in old age, even if intervening period we have somehow got misdirected. We see this in the case of Ajamil. Ajamil, in his younger days, was a very devout Brahman. He was religiously practicing all his duties as a Brahmana, worshipping the Lord carefully, doing his Sandhya Vandanam prayers, chanting the name of God, performing his worship. Everything was going very nicely. And you all know the story from the Srimad Bhagavatam, that unfortunately he met with bad company. And in that bad company of this prostitute, he spoilt his life. And he went into bad company, became a dacoit and many other things. But later on, at the point of death, he chanted the name of Narayan. Why? Because he gave his son that name Narayan. As a very young man of not more than 20 to 25 years old, he fell down from the religious path and became a very evil person, a sinful person. And he remained like this till he was 80 plus years of age. So in spite of living 60 years out of 80 years in a sinful way, why did he give his child the name Narayan? And why not Bunty or Pinky or something? What was it? What was it that came in his mind that made him give that child the name Narayan? And it is because of that he was saved. When the Yamadutas came to get Ajamil, he became very frightened upon seeing them. And he chanted the name of his son, not even of the Lord, Narayan, very loudly. And upon hearing the helpless chanting of their Lord's name, the Vishnu Dutas came very fast and they stopped the Yamadutas and said, wait, this is not your jurisdiction. You have no authority to arrest this person because he is under our jurisdiction. And then there was a great debate between the two of them. And the Yamadutas had to go back with their heads hung in shame. They went back to Yamaraj and asked, what is going on? We never knew there is somebody superior to you. And then Yamaraj had to explain. So the point is that Ajamil was saved not simply because he chanted the name of Narayan at the time of death. He was saved ultimately because he had good sanskars in his youth and childhood. Therefore he had a good sense to name his child Narayan. And because of that, he was always calling out his child's name. Narayan, come here. Narayan, go there. Narayan, eat your food. Narayan, don't do mischief. So Narayan, 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 Narayan. All the time he was chanting the name of Narayan. So how much purification? So we see that giving good stands one in good stead, even if in one's youth and middle age one gets spoiled. One sees this happening many times. People from good backgrounds, good cultured families, religious families, somehow in their youthful days or middle age days, because of professional pressures and everything, they start doing many sinful activities. But eventually they come back. They remember these good old days. I remember meeting in Mumbai one very wealthy man, corporate chief. And his father was an army man. And this man now was this gentleman whom I met, was totally involved with his profession. From morning to night, late 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, he would sit. And he had accumulated crores of rupees. He had become very wealthy and powerful. And then he made an honest confession. He said, many years I have spent like this. I have got so much money now. But I am tired. I see what is the use now. All this money, all this name, fame, working hard. For what? Now I am remembering in my childhood. My father used to make me sit compulsory with him. And all the family members would sit. And my father, although he was in the army and he had to go to many places, but whenever he was at home, he would make us sit and he would chant the Ramayana. And all of us would chant Ramayana after him. And all those stories and those wonderful days in my childhood, they come back to me. I envy you people, he said. See, you are totally engrossed now and I am caught here. I am stuck in this business now. So just see, although his youth days and middle age, he forgot God, apparently, and he was leading a very materialistic life, but that sanskar, that training of his childhood was there in his mind. It was haunting him. And because material nature had frustrated him sufficiently, now he was becoming more inclined and remembering the old days. Yes, how wonderful it was. Such a nice experience. We used to all sit together, hear the wonderful stories of the Ramayana. So somebody may say, well, what happens if he gets spoilt in the youth? It doesn't matter. But whatever he does now, at least that is in his good stead. I want to tell you about a very interesting community in America. It is called the Amish. We were talking, Yes, we were talking about the Amish yesterday. And these people have a very peculiar culture. They are Christians, but they come from Switzerland. They migrated to America because of persecution about 600 to 700 years ago. And the strange part is that till today, even though they are living in America, they speak that same old language of 600 years ago, what they had in Switzerland. They wear the same dress that they wore 600 years ago. They have many of the same social customs and habits that they had at that time. Because they want to protect their way of life and their religion. And they live in communes, isolated from the rest of the world. But ultimately, government pressure and the pressures of the world outside, the times are changing very fast. And what about the youth? How do they deal with their youth? Because you know that in America, for the youth it is a very dangerous thing. By the time the youth are 12 or 13 years of age, they have violated all the 4 regulative principles. Absolutely all the 4. And by the time they're 15, they have become professionals at these things. And the temptations of the outside world are extremely powerful, extremely loose is the culture in America and the Western world. So how do they manage with their children? They bring them up in their schools, but eventually when they have to go to college outside, they get exposed to all this. So what do? And many times what happens is that these children, because they have been exposed only to their own thing, when they go outside and suddenly experience all the freedom and the pleasures that youth offers them outside, they go crazy. Though some people start drinking like anything, some people take to some other bad habits. But their policy is very clear. He says, we are prepared for a 5 to 10% casualty rate. Once they reach a certain adult age and time for them to go to college, we let them go. We give them full freedom. Go, do what you like. Anyway, they're going to do what they like. You can't stop them. So, but they voluntarily tell them, do what you like. Most of them experiment with sense gratification outside. They take to smoking, drinking, whatever else the young people do, they do. And 90 to 95% of them, within 4 to 5 years, they come back willingly and join the community again and follow the same rules and regulations strictly as before. 5%, 10% drop out and they go away into the outside world. But 90% come back because they experience the frustration of the outside world. They experience the futility of trying to enjoy the senses outside like the others are doing. They see how unhappy and miserable all the other young people are in spite of all this free material enjoyment. And they remember from their childhood and the younger days as students, what a nice culture they had in their own homes, in their own houses. Such a nice godly culture, so pure, so clean. They like it. And they come back and they grow up and the same thing goes on with their children. So in ISKCON also we sometimes face similar problems. Grihasthas are trying to bring up their children in Krishna consciousness, but the outside world is very difficult. So those who are in their teens, in their student life, youth, should be very careful to remember these points. That we should not get infected by the disease of the other youth in the outside world. At home, if the culture is strong, if in this critical period of life, a youth becomes very strong in Krishna consciousness, then whole life long he or she will be protected. This is the benefit. So therefore, practicing Krishna consciousness, taking to spiritual life at a young age is something very, very beneficial. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Any other last points you want to mention? It's quite a detailed analysis, which all of you have done. Correct? How many points is that? 16 or 17 points. So now you have 16 or 17 strong reasons to tell other people or even to convince yourself that now is the time in youth that one should take to Krishna consciousness. And just in case those who are not in that period of youth now feel dejected, but what about us? Okay, we never got the fortune to take to it in our youth, so what about us? No problem. Whatever stage of life we are in, we should take to Krishna consciousness. Whenever we begin something, that is our youthful period. So consider that we are 50 years young, we are 60 years young in life, and practice Krishna consciousness. Because Krishna consciousness is a prescription for eternal youth. Krishna is Nitya Navanavayaman, ever fresh, the eternal youth, Navakishore. The soul is Navakishore also. So by practicing Krishna consciousness, we are going towards a life of eternal bliss and youth. Krishna always remains like a 16-year-old boy, fresh. Have you ever seen Krishna with a white beard, or with a walking stick and bent shoulders, and no, or with teeth fallen out, or Krishna going to the dentist or the doctor? No. Krishna is ever youthful 16-year-old boy, 16 to 20 years of age. So anyone who practices Krishna consciousness also becomes youthful at heart, becomes fresh, becomes happy, joyful at heart. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you very much. Are there any questions? Or comments? So then, what should we do now? Hare Prabhu? Kirtan for some time.